Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Shreya Dhoundial. As we speak, alarm bells are ringing around the world over artificial intelligence. That artificial intelligence will outsmart humans one day was always known. But that scenario could be closer than we think. That warning from experts across the globe sent the White House into a huddle. President Biden, the leader of the richest country in the world, has summoned the biggest tech companies in the world. The communication is clear. AI is a force of good that can easily cross over to the dark side, creating social, economic, and political chaos. President Biden said, be mindful and do the right thing. Companies like Google and Microsoft are spending billions and billions of dollars to develop the next big thing in artificial intelligence. Is there a need to pause that race for 6 months and see what direction AI is headed and what it will take for it not to go rogue? Now, I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm no tech expert. So over the next 22 minutes, I will not give you any jargon or throw any complicated themes at you. I just want to show you how you encounter artificial intelligence every day and why you should be informed about the upside and downside of AI. The warning over AI has come from a man called the godfather of AI. We'll talk about him in just a bit. Now, almost immediately after his warning, US President Joe Biden summoned an emergency meeting with top tech companies who are in a race with each other, just by the way, to build the next big thing in AI. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella and Google CEO Sundar Pichai, along with CEOs of Anthropic and OpenAI, flew into the White House and left with some advice and warning. Biden said, and I quote, "What you're doing has enormous potential and enormous danger." Vice President Kamala Harris warned that companies have an ethical, moral, and legal responsibility to guarantee that these AI products are safe and secure for citizens around the globe. The Biden administration has also announced a $140 million fund to fund AI research institutes. However, the investment is just a fraction of the billions of dollars that private sector companies are pouring into AI. Microsoft, for example, has invested $10 billion in OpenAI. Meta has invested $33 billion in its AI ventures, while Google has invested $400 million. It's a bit like an arms race. No one wants to be left behind, and no one knows where to stop. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the big danger. Now, the panic button has been pressed by someone whose credibility cannot be questioned. Geoffrey Hinton is often known as the godfather of AI. Let's put his pictures out. He's a psychologist and a computer scientist and the brain behind Google Brain, a research team that was dedicated to the development of AI at Google. In 2018, Hinton, along with 2 other researchers, was awarded the Nobel Prize of Computing. He retired from Google 2 days ago to openly speak about the dangers of AI. He's warning of mass layoffs and massive misinformation campaigns if companies continue to develop advanced chatbots, which essentially are virtual beings that he says will be smarter and therefore more dangerous than humans one day. In the wrong hands, he says, this artificial intelligence could end up being dark, dangerous, and disruptive, capable of starting and fighting wars. He now says he regrets some of his work in AI. Listen in to what he's saying.
If you look at these large language models, they have about 1 trillion connections. And things like GPT-4 know much more than we do. They have sort of common sense knowledge about everything. And so they probably know 1,000 times as much as a person. But they've got 1 trillion connections and we've got 100 trillion connections. So they're much, much better at getting a lot of knowledge into only 1 trillion connections than we are. What we really want, I don't think we're going to stop developing them because they're so useful. They'll be incredibly useful in medicine and in everything else. So I don't think there's much chance of stopping development. What we want is some way of making sure that even if they're smarter than us, they're going to do things that are beneficial for us. My one hope is that because if we allowed it to take over, it will be bad for all of us. We could get the US and China to agree, like we could with nuclear weapons, which were bad for all of us.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat with respect to the existential threat. So we all ought to be able to cooperate on trying to stop it. So the sort of the alarm bell I'm ringing is to do with the existential threat of them taking control. Lots of other people have talked about that, and I don't consider myself to be an expert on that, but there's some very obvious things that they're going to make a whole bunch of jobs much more efficient. But I think there's going to be huge increases in productivity. My worry is that those increases in productivity are going to go to putting people out of work and making the rich richer and the poor poorer. And as you do that, as you make that gap bigger, society gets more and more violent. I think the technology should be good and it should make things work better. It's the politics we need to fix for things like employment. And until very recently, I thought this existential crisis was a long way off. So I don't really have any regrets about what I did.
Now, backing Dr. Jeffrey Hinton is Elon Musk. He says AI has the potential of civilizational destruction. Important and interesting because Mr. Musk is the co-founder of one of the biggest AI companies in the world, OpenAI, that just, by the way, gave us ChatGPT. He, along with 3,000 other scientists, signed an open letter to AI labs, urging them to stop research for at least 6 months. Of course, that isn't stopping Mr. Musk from pushing ahead with a new AI. Listen in to what Mr. Musk is saying and warning.
AI is perhaps more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard that probability, but it is non-trivial. It has the potential of civilizational destruction.
Now, for those of you thinking how this doomsday scenario impacts you, please hear me out for the next 2 minutes. Artificial intelligence is something you encounter every day. You may not realize it, but you do encounter it every day, and right now in a good way, not in a bad way. Doctors are using it to make diagnostic machines much smarter. Parents are using it to complete their children's homework, ChatGPT. Companies are using it to filter job applications. And it is helping you make choices. It is planning your holidays. People are even using artificial intelligence to write their wedding vows. In the most simple terms, artificial intelligence is a machine's ability to perform the same cognitive functions that are usually associated with human minds and human intelligence. So AI is a tool which right now is making life easier for us. But the downsides are worth a pause. Jobs are already being sacrificed at the altar of artificial intelligence. IBM, for example, has shelved its plans to hire 7,800 people because they are expecting AI to do those jobs. Britain's scientific advisor is warning that AI could end up having the same socio-economic impact on humanity like the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century. Professor Harry Sudden from the University of Colorado is saying that AI has managed to shock him with its depth and its dangers.
Right now, these systems are still in their infancy, so they have some issues sometimes in terms of factual accuracy. I've been studying this for 20 years, and I'm just amazed. This is the first technology in AI that has really shocked and surprised me, and I've been in this for a while.
AI is increasingly making its presence felt in the world of media as well. Sometimes we call it the rise of the robots. Oh, and what a mess they make sometimes. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Meanwhile, a Kuwaiti media organization unveiled Fadeha. She's the world's first AI-generated news presenter. She looks, well, like a human. I won't say exactly like a human, but almost like a human. Let's put her out on our screens and show our viewers what exactly we mean. And she also speaks in a Kuwaiti accent. Imagine that, speaking in a Kuwaiti accent. China went one step further. They gave us Ren, which is a virtual news presenter who can answer questions and deliver news 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Won't ask for leave and won't ask for a raise as well. That's not her, by the way. We'll just put her on the screen in just a bit. You could say she's a perfect employee who will eat up everyone else's job. Let's look at ChatGPT. It is writing articles, blogs, scripts, dialogues, songs, and so much more. They are already doing voiceovers. You might have already heard them on Instagram. One day they will be singing like Lata Mangeshkar too. I'm not joking here. Cynthia Nixon is one of the lead actresses of Sex and the City. She says while it will be difficult to avoid AI, its voice or content will be synthetic and not have the same impact. Listen in to what she's saying.
I think there are concerns that we all have. I think we're puzzled by them. I think we don't really believe that a robot can write something that will be as compelling as what a human being could write. In the same way, with all the new technology, you can bring Marilyn Monroe back from the grave, or Gary Cooper, or Judy Garland, but of course it's not them. It's a synthetic version of them, and a synthetic version of writing or acting is never going to be alive or unexpected.
In conclusion, let me say this. AI is like riding on a high-speed train. It gets you to your destination really quickly, but this high-speed train has the potential to one day build its own tracks. Imagine that, a train building its own tracks. It's out of your control then and will take whatever direction it wants to. For all you know, it could be headed straight to hell. Am I painting a doomsday scenario here? That's the question I'm asking my guests this evening. Sharad Sharma is co-founder of Spirit Foundation, and Kazim Rizvi is founding director of The Dialogue. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Let me come to you first, Sharad. The fact is that there have been warnings, enough and more warnings around artificial intelligence for a while now. Of course, the godfather of artificial intelligence says he's quitting Google to speak more openly about it. I think just reinforces the concerns around AI. What do you make of these concerns and the fact that the United States of America is now setting up a big fund to ensure that AI doesn't go rogue?
Clearly, as you pointed out earlier, AI is a major disruption, right? And there are good outcomes and there are bad outcomes. And we as humanity are challenged to figure out how do we regulate AI and regulate for AI, right? I mean, so we have both these challenges. We need to regulate AI so that, we can kind of damp down the bad outcomes. But as a country, we need to become an AI nation as well, because if we don't, there are economic consequences that are associated with that. So we have to make sure we have a vibrant ecosystem in India that is not merely a consumer of other people's AI, but is also the creator of AI that will be used here in India and perhaps in other parts of the world. So we have huge challenges. We have challenges at every level. You pointed out we have challenges at the organizational level. What will happen to work? How will you assess people? We have challenges in education. We will have challenges later in time in healthcare. We will have challenges with respect to how people use free time, entertainment, and all of those things are going to change as well. And then, of course, we have governance challenges. What does it do to our democracy, right? And then beyond that, we have societal challenges as to what does it do to humanity or human experience, right? And so this is going to keep us busy for the next, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years to sort this out.
Oh my God. I just hope AI doesn't go rogue by then. You know, the big concern right now is, apart from other challenges, is that artificial intelligence will take away jobs. It's already happening. IBM is saying we are not hiring. Kazim Rizvi, welcome to the show. IBM is already saying that we are not hiring 7,800 people because we expect AI to do that job. Britain's scientific advisor is saying AI's impact will be felt in the socio-economic sphere, and it will be almost as wide and deep as the industrial revolution. My point is the world ready for AI, and do tech companies need to be saved from themselves? Because right now, it's almost like an arms race where people don't know where to stop, and you're just, rushing in to make the next big thing, not knowing what the next big thing could end up doing to its end user, which is the customer, which is you and me.
Thank you. So I think, first of all, I think it's important to understand that AI is here to stay. And as a nation, we have to invest in creating the right amount of technology, and also to make sure that we're able to export this technology. Right, that's number one. Number two is, you spoke about, industrial revolution. I think AI is probably the biggest technological revolution we've seen in the last 200, 300 years. And in my opinion, probably, after fire was invented, AI is probably at that level. Right, it's the next big thing, like what computers did in the 20th century. AI is doing us in the 21st century society. So it's disrupting society, it's disrupting jobs, it's creating new type of jobs, it's sort of getting rid of old type of jobs. So of course, as a race, as humanity, we have to sort of level up and also upskill our people to make sure that we are able to ride the bandwagon and also take advantage of AI. Because I think as a nation, definitely agree with what Mr. Sharma said, that we have to be able to develop indigenous AI as well. And the technology has to be created, and we have to put in the right amount of principles. Now, when we talk about principles and we talk about regulation, there are some of the things which we have to be very mindful of. Number one, we have to keep human loop there when we develop AI. The technology has to be non-discriminatory as possible. AI requires a lot of data. It feeds on the higher the data the more data you give, the better the technology is. So you have to make sure that you provide as diverse set of data sets as possible, but you also make sure that the quality of the data which the AI technology is using is very high. Then there are some of the risk associated with it. We have seen in the EU, they are developing an AI Act to regulate the risk and harms of AI. In Brazil, there is a law which is being discussed to do the same. I think in India, we need to start talking about how do we sort of somehow regulate the risk and harms of AI while making sure that the technology is developed. So you have to give it a roadmap. You have to shape it in some or the other manner. And you cannot allow it to sort of, be deployed and let loose on its own. Definitely, there has to be some sort of guidelines and principles. And there's a lot of discussion happening on ethical use of AI. It has to be in a way that you protect children, you protect people from the risk. The technology has to be very authentic. It has to allow for critical thinking as well, and inclusivity. Right? These are some of these principles, and of course, it has to be human-centered. And some of the human approaches have to be deployed within the technology. Should we be scared of it? I don't think so. Definitely, AI cannot, in my opinion, does not have the emotional intelligence which we humans possess. It can do a lot of great things. It's basically a tool or a model which collects and analyzes tons and tons of data and gives you patterns which can predict the future and predict what's going to happen in a particular sector. Let's say, for example, we are seeing that in healthcare, it can help to predict cancer well in advance, which is a great use. Now, how do you protect that data set? How do you protect patients? And how do you make sure that the technology is also safeguarded? Because as we all know, that an arms race will happen, and we in India have to be very careful in terms of bringing the right regulations and the right thinking for our future generation to develop AI.
So, I think what has happened in the last 48 hours is sending the signal that is being sent to India is, guys, you need to be careful, and there have to be regulations in place. I think that is the largest story that is emerging. Sharad Sharma, I know that every time a new technology comes, whether it was the radio or the television, there were doomsday scenarios that were predicted even it was launched. But when it comes to AI we know has the potential to outsmart the very, very smart people who make it. And that is very much a possibility. It's not happened today, but there's a good chance it could happen day after. In that scenario, what are the worries around artificial intelligence? For example, data. If artificial intelligence is so smart, it knows exactly how to use my data in the wrong hands. My bank balance, for example, could be wiped clean. I mean, this is just one of the doomsday scenario I'm giving you. So there are real downsides that are attached to AI if we continue to go at the speed at which we are going right now when it comes to AI development. And just by the way, I believe 16% of AI's talent pool is Indian.
Yes. So clearly, we have to reimagine certain things, right? And there's a famous evolutionary biologist. His name is E.O. Wilson, who passed away in December 2021. He became famous for this quote. He says, we have a Paleolithic brain, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And so he said, if we don't reimagine how we deal with technology in our society, then obviously this godlike technology will hack both the Paleolithic brain and the medieval institutions. So we have to upgrade our systems at a very fundamental level. Now, this has happened before. So you remember when the Industrial Revolution started in 1760, the society didn't respond to it. And in 1848, the manifesto came, the Karl Marx manifesto. And then in 1862, the Land Reforms Act came in the US, which established lots of colleges and university, which was probably a very significant moment because Lincoln said, maybe the world will remember me for this rather than the fact that I addressed the Civil War, right? The Land Grants Act. So, we are at that moment again. So in the next 10 years, we will see substantial change in the way we deal with variety of issues. For example, all our kind of value systems are training a young child to deal with good versus evil. Now, that's not going to go away. But a new one that will become equally augmentation is to teach them to deal with augmentation versus distraction. Because distraction in the form of games, in form of social media, heavens forbid, in form of porn, in form of, all kinds of things like that, they'll all be revved up by AI, right? And so if a child doesn't know how to deal with this, they'll end up falling victim to distraction and they'll never be able to seize their own potential. But if they decide to seize and grow their own potential, they'll have augmentation technologies available that will let them be a better chef, better painter, better writer, better student, you can name it, better athlete, right? All that will be available at your hands. So there is going to be a significant rejigging of both societal governance as well as competitive, from a business perspective, as well as individual issues. And so we are going to be in this fascinating period where we have to do all this. Now, I just want to let you know that in the last 10 years, there's something that India has done which is not fully appreciated. We've created this India stack where we took charge of basic technologies which mediate the flow of people, money, and information, right? And we are now the epicenter for the world. The whole world is coming to India to learn that experience of digital public infrastructure. Now, thankfully, in the case of AI, something has been in the works for some time, which will be launched in July of this year. And it's called the DEPA training cycle, which mediates the flow of training data sets and creates a well-regulated and open market for training data sets, which ensures that they're used for good purposes. India will be the first country in the world to do this. Okay. And also we have pioneered a system called techno-legal regulation. So when my colleague was talking about what Europe is doing or what Japan is doing, what Australia is doing, all of them are talking about techno-legal regulation in some form or fashion. And India is the leading thinker about that as well. So India will not be left out. I just want to assure you, India will have a role to play, perhaps a very significant role to play in how this AI society emerges as we go forward.
Okay. And there is no doing away without it. It's the future, you're telling us. AI is the future. We better learn to deal with it. It is a force for good. Could it cross over to the dark side? Yes, it could cross over to the dark side, but that is where governments and countries and public institutions step in to ensure that doesn't happen, to put in regulations before this speeding train takes a track of its own. We leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much, Sharat Sharma, for joining us. It was good to chat to you. Kazim Rizvi, thank you very much for being on the show as well. With that, it's a wrap from me.